The security alarm was still blaring when Mark slammed the mop bucket aside and sprinted into the vault chamber. He wasn't supposed to be in there. He was just the janitor. But when the CEO's daughter screamed and the guards froze, Mark did something no one expected. He slammed his hand on the floor panel and said, "It's under here." Silence fell, because only one man alive knew about that hidden door, and he wasn't supposed to be a janitor. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Mark Holland worked the late shift at Bellstone Bank's high-security downtown branch. Not as an executive, not even as a guard. He was the guy with the mop. Widowed, quiet, just trying to make rent while raising his 6-year-old daughter, Ellie. No one looked twice at him. That's how he liked it. Until the night a vault door glitched and set off an internal lockdown. Chaos unfolded. Red lights flashed. The vault chamber sealed. And inside, unfortunately, was 17-year-old Ava Brackner, daughter of Bellstone's powerful CEO. The guards panicked. They didn't have override access. Neither did the regional manager. But Mark? He didn't panic. He calmly dropped the mop handle, stepped forward, and pressed 3 times on a tile no one else paid attention to. The floor clicked. A panel shifted. And beneath it, a curved metal door emerged from the concrete. Something buried, secret, and obviously not in the blueprints. Ava stared at him, pale. How? How did you know that was there? Mark didn't answer. He simply knelt and opened the hidden vault passage. Cool air swept up. Dust. Silence. The regional manager stormed in, breathless. What the hell is going on? But Ava grabbed his arm. He saved me. The janitor. He saved me. By the next morning, Mark wasn't just the janitor anymore. The boardroom was silent, save for the rhythmic ticking of the chrome clock above the projector. 12 directors, 1 CEO, and a janitor standing at the far end of the table, his blue uniform still faintly stained with floor wax. Mark Holland, CEO Roland Brackner said, his voice clipped. Would you care to explain how you knew about a security feature none of our engineers or architects reported? Mark looked tired, not shaken, just like a man who didn't care much for rooms like this. I didn't think she'd survive if I didn't, he said simply. You're not answering the question. No, Mark replied, meeting his eyes. I'm not. Half the board exchanged glances. The legal counsel leaned forward. Mr. Holland, unauthorized access or knowledge of this facility's hidden infrastructure violates multiple federal. I didn't access it. Mark interrupted, voice calm but firmer now. I revealed it. Because a teenage girl was about to suffocate in a broken vault. I figured you'd care more about that than your secrets. That's when Ava, sitting silently next to her father, finally spoke. He's right, she said, her voice low but unshaken. And we should be asking why none of you knew the door existed. The room froze. Mark turned to leave. But just before he reached the door, Ava's voice stopped him again. What's your daughter's name? Mark paused. Ellie. I'd like to meet her. He turned, brow furrowed. Why? Ava smiled faintly. Because when I was trapped in that room, the last thing I thought about before I passed out was that I'd never see my dad again. And she almost had to feel that too. You saved my life, Mr. Holland. You don't just mop floors. Not anymore. That afternoon, while most employees whispered rumors in hallways, Ava Brackner pulled her father into his office and locked the door. You said you'd give me real responsibility. Let me start by protecting the man who protected me. Roland sighed. Ava, I can't. He knew about something that. Maybe ask why your bank has vault secrets even you don't know. Maybe ask why a janitor knows more than your architects. Maybe ask yourself if you trust your empire more than the man who just saved your daughter. Silence. And then Roland said something no one ever thought would come from the lips of Billionaire. Promote him. Meanwhile, Mark walked Ellie home through the rain, umbrella barely holding together. Dad, she said, staring up at him. Were you scared? Yeah, Mark admitted. But I thought of you. And that made it easier. She didn't say anything, just took his hand tighter. What Mark didn't know, what he couldn't have imagined, was that Ava had already made a call. Not to her dad, not to HR, but to someone from Mark's past. Someone who would change everything. 2 nights later, the elevator in Bellstone Bank's top-floor penthouse opened, and in stepped a woman wearing combat boots and a leather jacket. Her hair was short, streaked with silver, and her eyes had the steady, unblinking focus of someone who'd spent years watching her six. She didn't stop at the front desk. She didn't flash a badge. She walked straight to Roland Brackner's private office. The CEO was reviewing internal blueprints when his door flew open. Ava was behind her, looking nervous but firm. "Dad, this is Captain Marla Jameson," the woman said, stepping forward and dropping a worn folder onto the desk. "U.S. Army Intelligence, retired. I'm here because your janitor saved my life 12 years ago. And you don't know who you've got working for you." Roland picked up the folder and flipped through it. Each page stripped away more of the story he thought he knew. Mark Holland, former U.S. Army engineer. Discharged under classified operations protocol. Last known assignment, Fort Blackridge, before it was wiped off the map in a cover-up buried by national security. "You're saying he's what? A spy?" "No," Marla replied. "He was the only one smart enough to get us out when our own country wrote us off. That vault trick he pulled, it's just one of a dozen things he built from scratch under pressure. Without him, 37 soldiers wouldn't have made it back home, including me." Roland sank back in his leather chair, brows tight. "Then why the hell is he mopping floors for $12 an hour?" "Because he's a single dad with a daughter who thinks the world's a lot nicer than it is," Marla said. "And he wants to keep it that way." Ava crossed her arms. "I told you, he's more than a janitor." That evening, in a small kitchen cluttered with school drawings and unpaid bills, Mark folded Ellie's laundry as she read a fairy tale at the table. The knock on the door startled them both. When he opened it, Marla stood there, hands in her pockets. Mark froze. "I told you never to show up." She looked past him and saw Ellie sitting at the table with her plush giraffe. "I know, but the game changed. You got noticed." Mark sighed, jaw clenched. "I didn't want this. You saved a girl's life. You didn't get a choice." Ellie peeked around the corner. "Dad, who is she?" Mark looked down at his daughter, then back at the woman who knew everything he'd buried. "She's an old friend," he said softly. "Not here to stay," Marla added quickly, kneeling to Ellie's level. "Just want to say thank you. Your dad saved my life. He's a hero." Ellie blinked, then smiled. "I know." Back at Bellstone HQ, Roland called a private board meeting. No assistants. No outside ears. "This man," he began, placing Mark's classified file on the table, "is the reason our daughter is alive. But he's also a threat if we don't understand him." The legal counsel raised an eyebrow. "Are you suggesting surveillance?" "I'm suggesting we hire him. Officially. Move him into strategic infrastructure. Let him build a system no one can ever penetrate. Not even him." Another director asked, "And if he says no?" Roland narrowed his eyes. "Then we make him say yes." But what no one in that room realized was that Mark Holland already knew. He'd bugged the room 6 hours ago, and he was done being silent. The morning sun hadn't fully risen when Mark entered the janitor's closet, but he wasn't carrying a mop this time. Instead, he pulled out a small, weathered black case from the vent above the shelf. Inside was a matte gray laptop patched with tape, its screen cracked in the upper corner. He placed it carefully on a rolling cart, connected a tiny device to it that looked like a power brick, but hummed like an engine, and typed in a 6-digit code. 3 lines of code scrolled across the screen, and suddenly he had live access to every single boardroom microphone in Bellstone Bank. Not because he hacked them, because he installed them. 15 years ago, before the building had even opened. Meanwhile, Ava stood in her father's office again, arms crossed, voice shaking. "You're doing it again, Dad. Turning people into threats just because they're not predictable." Roland sipped his coffee. "I'm protecting the company." "No, you're protecting your control." He put down the mug. "What do you even want from him, Ava?" "I want to give him a reason to stay, before someone else gives him a reason to destroy you." Down in the sub-basement, Mar pushed open the door to a storage vault, one no one had used since 2010. Inside were blueprint tubes, electrical maps, even unreleased patent diagrams. All of them his. Stored. Forgotten. Buried. He pulled out a schematic marked in red ink. Vault 6 override pathway. Manual trigger only. Beneath it, scribbled in smaller handwriting. "If you ever need out, make sure they can't trace it back to her." Her. That's what this had always been about. Not the bank. Not the board. Not even revenge. Ellie. That night, as Ellie fell asleep beside him after her bedtime story, Mark sat by the window, looking out over the city lights. The skyline pulsed like a living machine, cold, efficient, unforgiving. He whispered to himself, I didn't want this war, but if they're going to bring it to my door. Then he slid the laptop closer and typed a single command. Initiate fingerprint trap, vault access logs. Within seconds, his device began pulling hidden data streams. Every unauthorized vault entry in the last 5 years. One name kept popping up. Edgar Wren, Chief Infrastructure Officer. The man who swore under oath that no hidden doors existed in the bank. Mark leaned back, lips tight. Let's see what you've been hiding. The next morning, the entire bank was abuzz. Not because of a crisis, but because of a meeting invitation that showed up in every executive inbox. Top floor, 9 a.m., mandatory. Host, Mark Holland. Security tried to stop him. They failed. The receptionist asked where his visitor badge was. He ignored her. By 9 a.m. sharp, every director sat in the boardroom. At 9:01, Mark walked in, not in his janitor uniform, but in a tailored navy suit with no tie and worn combat boots beneath the polished hem. He placed a thick file on the table. Printed emails, camera stills, financial transfers, and blueprints, signed by Edgar Wren himself. I'm not here to threaten, Mark began. I'm here to warn. You've been breached from within. Your own infrastructure officer has been skimming from secure vaults for years, covering it with false floor layouts and duplicate entry logs. Roland sat forward. Do you have proof? Mark looked at Ava. She gave a slight nod. Then he pressed a button on a small remote. On the projector screen, a grainy video played. Edgar Wren, 3:12 a.m., entering Vault SIXS access corridor with a red key card. The boardroom went dead silent. Mark stared down the table. I saved your daughter. But this time, I'm saving your entire damn bank. So maybe you should start asking yourselves why a janitor had to do your job. The next morning, Edgar Wren was gone. His house empty. Accounts frozen. Warrant pending. But none of that made the headlines. What did? Former janitor exposes multi-million-dollar heist hidden beneath city's largest bank. And when reporters asked him how he discovered it, Mark simply said, sometimes the guy holding the mop knows where all the dirt is. The article went viral before noon. Single dad janitor outsmarts CEO's board. Exposes hidden vault scheme. By nightfall, Mark's face was on every screen. But behind the headlines, something deeper stirred. Something no camera could capture. That evening, Mark sat on the back porch of a modest brownstone apartment with Ellie nestled beside him, watching the stars. You're famous, Dad, she said through a sleepy grin. Like super famous. He smiled, brushing a lock of hair from her forehead. Fame doesn't mean much, honey. Not unless you use it right. Are you still going to be the janitor? Mark paused. No, he finally said. Not anymore. At Bellstone HQ, chaos roared behind polished doors. The board was in panic mode. Investors demanded stability. The media dug into every corner of the bank's operations. Meanwhile, Ava stood in the glass hallway, watching Mark's press conference on her phone. He never wanted the spotlight, she murmured. He just wanted justice. Her father stood beside her, silent. You never saw him, did you? She asked. I saw a man pushing a mop. No, she said, turning to him. You saw a man below you. But now the world sees who he is. And you're either going to do the right thing, or become the next man exposed. 3 days later, Mark received a letter by hand. Sealed. Gold embossed. Inside. Mr. Holland, we formally invite you to join Bellstone as Executive Director of Physical Security Systems. Full benefits. Flexible hours. Company home. A position created in your name. Ava Brackner, co-CEO. He reread it twice, then once more. The next day, he brought Ellie with him, this time to the front doors. The security guard at the entrance did a double take. Mr. Holland? You don't need to check in. Mark smiled. That's new. They took the elevator to the 23rd floor, the glass panels showing the entire city skyline. Ellie pressed her face to the glass, giggling. Inside the executive wing, Ava greeted them with 2 cups of cocoa and a soft smile. Welcome to your new office. Smells less like bleach, Mark joked. She laughed, then grew quiet. There's something else. Mark raised an eyebrow. I did some digging after everything, she continued. Into the old operations, your service records, your work. You've designed things that saved lives. But no one ever thanked you. No one saw you. I wasn't doing it for that. I know, Ava said. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you right for this. Weeks passed. The vault system was overhauled. The secret passage was bricked and sealed. The janitor's closet converted into a micro-museum with a plaque in honor of Mark Holland, who never needed a title to be a hero. Mark still walked the halls, but not with a mop. He wore a blazer now, held Ellie's hand on the way in, and spent his evenings helping other single parents through a new foundation he quietly funded himself. One cold Friday night, he saw a familiar woman by the lobby entrance. Marla Jameson. Same boots. Same calm fire in her eyes. "You made the papers," she said with a grin. "You always show up when I least expect you," he replied. "You always end up doing the impossible. Figured I'd check in." "Worried about me?" "No," she said. "Just proud." He didn't reply, just pulled her into a hug. "Still don't want the spotlight," he whispered. "Too late," she said. "You lit the damn sky." As Mark and Ellie walked home that night, snow drifted gently around them. She tugged his sleeve. "Dad." "Yeah." "If someone's mean to the janitor at my school, should I tell them your story?" He knelt down at her level, smiled, and touched her cheek. "No," he whispered. "Tell them their story isn't over yet."